February 23, 1943, 6:40 a.m., Tripoli, Libya. Dawn leaks through a dust-stained window as the Mediterranean wind rattles loose shutters against cracked stone. Inside a requisitioned villa overlooking the harbor, Erwin Rommel stands alone at a narrow table. He hasn't slept. His boots are still on. Sand clings to the cuffs of his trousers like the desert refuses to let go. A courier's footsteps fade down the corridor. The door clicks shut. Silence. Rommel opens the folder. Paper, ink, columns of numbers. No artillery thunder, no engine roar, just arithmetic. You can almost hear the port outside, cranes idle, gulls circling, the hollow clang of chains without cargo. The harbor looks intact from here, but Rommel knows better. He has watched British bombers crater it, night after night. He has counted the ships that never arrived. Now the reckoning is typed neatly in front of him. Fuel, ammunition, replacements. Rommel's finger moves down the page, line by line. His jaw tightens, not in anger, not yet, but in recognition. This is not a battlefield report. This is a verdict. Since El Alamein, the numbers have been bleeding. After the retreat from Egypt, after the long, grinding withdrawal across Libya, the Afrika Korps has been living on promises. Promises from Rome, promises from Berlin, promises that convoys would get through, that tank losses would be replaced, that fuel would catch up with the men who needed it. The report says otherwise. The monthly fuel allotment is less than half of what is required for basic operations, not offensives, not breakthroughs, just movement. The tanks, Panzer IIIs, IVs, the prized Tigers recently landed in Tunisia, are steel statues without petrol. Ammunition stocks are worse. Some frontline units are rationing artillery rounds as if they were loaves of bread. Rommel exhales slowly. He's done this before reading disaster in advance. In France in 1940, he learned how speed and supply dance together. In Africa, he learned how quickly that dance turns into a stumble when the music stops. He flips the page. Replacements. The Afrika Korps is down tens of thousands of men, veterans lost at El Alamein, others captured during the retreat. Some simply vanished into the desert, vehicles broken, columns bombed, units dissolved by exhaustion and heat. The report lists incoming replacements in careful, optimistic language. Rommel does the math in his head. They won't arrive in time, and many won't arrive at all. He closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. You can imagine what he sees, not paper, but roads. The long coastal highway from Tripoli to Tunis. The narrow passes of southern Tunisia, the exposed columns crawling forward under Allied air supremacy, every movement visible, every mistake punished from the sky. Outside, an engine coughs to life, then dies. Fuel again. Rommel has spent 2 years fighting not the British, but distance. Africa stretches supply lines until they snap. British convoys cross a short hop from Alexandria. German and Italian ships must survive the gauntlet of Malta, submarines, bombers, radar-guided strikes. Every crate that reaches Africa is a minor miracle, and miracles, Rommel knows, are not a strategy. He straightens, runs a hand across the map pinned to the wall. Tunisia is circled in red grease pencil. The last defensible ground. The last chance to hold something that resembles an Axis foothold in Africa. The Americans are here now. Green, yes, but learning fast. Kasserine Pass proved they could bleed. It also proved they could adapt. And adaptation requires supplies. Rommel's reputation, the Desert Fox, the master of maneuver, has been built on movement, sudden flanking attacks, rapid concentration of armor, hitting the enemy where he doesn't expect it. But every tactic he knows assumes one thing: fuel in the tanks. The report strips that illusion away. This war, the paper tells him, is already lost. A knock at the door. His chief of staff, General Siegfried Westphal, steps inside, careful with his expression. He's seen the same numbers. Everyone has. But no one wants to be the first to say it aloud. Rommel doesn't look up. Any word from Rome? He asks. Westphal hesitates. That pause says everything. Assurances, he replies. They promise increased convoy protection. Rommel lets out a short, humorless breath. Assurances don't stop bombs, promises don't refuel panzers. He finally turns. His eyes are sharp, tired, and clear. This is the look of a man who understands something before others are ready to hear it. The British haven't won Africa yet, but the war has already decided. Rommel folds the report carefully, as if respecting an enemy that beat him without firing a shot. Outside, the harbor remains quiet, too quiet. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Allied convoys are moving freely. Somewhere in the air, bombers are already forming up for the next strike. Rommel knows what comes next: defensive lines, desperate counterattacks, political pressure to hold at all costs. He also knows the cost will be paid in blood for a cause the numbers have already condemned. He reaches for his cap. The realization has settled in. Now he must decide what to do with it. Rommel steps outside into the pale Libyan morning. The sun is already climbing, promising heat that will turn the air into a furnace by noon. Vehicles idle in the courtyard, staff cars, motorcycles, a lone half-track with its engine ticking unevenly. None of them are going anywhere far today. He pauses, listening. In 1941, mornings like this meant movement. Columns forming, engines roaring, orders barked across dust-choked air. Now there is only waiting. And waiting, Rommel has learned, is death when the enemy owns the sky. He climbs into his staff car. The driver, a young corporal with a bandaged hand, snaps to attention. Rommel nods once. The car rolls toward the forward command post, passing Italian infantry, digging shallow positions with entrenching tools worn smooth by overuse. Their uniforms are faded, their faces hollow. They look up as Rommel passes, not cheering, not saluting wildly, just watching. The desert fox still means something to them, perhaps the last thing. Inside the command tent, maps cover every surface. Tunisia dominates the center green pins for Axis units, red for the Allies. The green pins are thinning. Some represent formations that exist only on paper now. Battalions reduced to companies, companies reduced to squads. General Giovanni Messe is already there, leaning over the map. The Italian commander looks up as Rommel enters. The two men share a brief, knowing glance. Different uniforms, same problem. The Americans are reinforcing the south, Messe says quietly. More armor, more trucks. Rommel nods. Trucks. Always trucks. He thinks again of the report in his pocket. Fuel deliveries scheduled for March. Deliveries that require ships that must survive the Mediterranean. Deliveries that assume ports that haven't yet been bombed into rubble. He traces a finger along the Mareth Line old French fortifications in southern Tunisia. Concrete bunkers, anti-tank ditches. On paper, it's a strong position. In reality, it's another line that needs men, shells, and gasoline. "We can hold here," Rommel says at last. His voice is steady, professional. Briefly, Messe watches him closely. And then? Rommel doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the map again, at the narrowing space, at the arrows showing Allied pressure from east and west. British 8th Army advancing relentlessly from Libya. Americans pushing hard after Kasserine, determined not to be humiliated again. Then he speaks softly, then Africa ends. There it is, not dramatic, not defiant, just fact. Rommel has fought losing battles before, but this is different. This isn't about being outmaneuvered. This is strangulation. The Allies are squeezing the Axis lifeline shut, Malta neutralized, air superiority complete, shipping losses unsustainable. Even if Rommel were given another panzer division tomorrow, it would arrive without fuel, without ammunition, without spare parts. A staff officer enters with fresh aerial reconnaissance photos. Rommel studies them. Allied columns move in daylight now, unafraid. Supply dumps visible from the air, roads thick with traffic. The imbalance is obscene. Rommel hands the photos back. His decision is forming not tactical, but strategic, political. That afternoon, he dictates a message to Berlin. Not a boast, not a promise of victory, a warning. He explains the situation in blunt terms: insufficient fuel, inadequate replacements, total Allied air superiority. He writes that continued resistance will lead only to the destruction of experienced troops with no military benefit. He requests permission to withdraw, or at least freedom of maneuver. The words are carefully chosen. Rommel knows Hitler, knows how he reacts to anything that smells like retreat. But Rommel also knows something else. Ignoring reality has already cost Germany dearly. When the message is sent, he sits back, suddenly very tired. For the first time in months, he allows himself to imagine the end, not triumph, but evacuation. Africa slipping away, men captured, flags lowered. That evening, Allied bombers arrive just after sunset. The ground trembles. Explosions ripple across the port. Fires bloom orange against the darkening sky. Rommel watches from a slit trench as fuel tanks erupt fuel he will never get to use. Each explosion feels like punctuation. By nightfall, the answer from Berlin has not yet arrived. Rommel knows what it will say before it comes. Hold, fight, no retreat. The numbers have already answered differently. As the bombing fades, Rommel stares toward the east, where the British are advancing steadily, methodically, with supply lines that actually work. For the first time since Africa began, he is not thinking about how to win the next battle. He is thinking about how many men can be saved from a war that has already moved past them. And somewhere in Berlin, far from sand and shortages, men are about to decide whether they will listen. The reply from Berlin arrives at dawn. It is short, sharp, absolute. No withdrawal. Hold Tunisia. Victory depends on will. Rommel reads it once, then again. He folds the paper slowly, deliberately, as if giving himself time to absorb not the words, but the disconnect behind them. Berlin is a world of maps with clean lines, of arrows drawn in pencil, of faith placed in ideology rather than tonnage and fuel. Africa is a world of dust, broken engines, and men who have not eaten properly in days. Rommel steps outside. The air smells of smoke from the night's bombing. Somewhere in the distance, artillery mutters probing fire, nothing decisive. Yet, he knows this moment. He has lived it before, in different forms, when commanders far from the front refuse to accept what the front already knows. The difference now is scale. There's no maneuver left that can reverse this, only delay. That morning, Rommel tours the forward positions along the Mareth line. He moves quickly, helmet pulled low, accompanied by a small escort. Allied aircraft are never far away. Every vehicle disperses the moment a shadow crosses the ground. In the trenches, German and Italian soldiers stand as he approaches. They straighten, some smile, others just stare. They still believe in him, perhaps more than they believe in the war itself. Rommel stops beside a young lieutenant commanding an anti-tank gun. The barrel is chipped. The crew is down to 4 men. "How many rounds?" Rommel asks. 27, Herr Feldmarschall. Rommel nods. 27 rounds to stop a British armored advance, supported by air power and artillery. He doesn't correct the lieutenant when the young man says, "It will be enough." Rommel moves on. He sees the pattern everywhere, units ready to fight but only once. There will be no second engagement, no reserves to plug the gaps. If the line breaks, it will not bend, it will shatter. Back at headquarters, Rommel convenes his senior commanders. The mood is grim but focused. These are professionals. They understand what is happening even if Berlin refuses to. "We will fight," Rommel tells them, "but we will not waste lives to satisfy illusions." The words hang in the air, careful, dangerous. Everyone in the room knows what they imply. Plans are drawn for limited counterattacks, sharp, local actions meant to disrupt Allied preparations. Rommel still believes in action, in forcing the enemy to react. But now the goal is different, not victory. Time for evacuation of wounded. Time to shorten the front. Time to preserve what can still be preserved. The British strike first. On March 20th, the 8th Army opens the Mareth offensive with a thunder Rommel hasn't heard since El Alamein. Artillery pounds the line. Tanks roll forward under a canopy of fighter bombers. The earth shakes. The air screams. Rommel is at a forward observation post when the attack begins. He watches through binoculars as British armor advances, methodical, well-supplied, relentless. This is not the overconfident British Army of 1941. This is a machine refined by years of war. German guns fire back. Some find their targets. Tanks burn. But for every British vehicle destroyed, 3 more appear, and above them, the sky remains hostile. Rommel orders a counterstroke, his instinct, his trademark. A swift armored thrust to the flank. It works briefly. British units pull back. Confusion ripples across the battlefield. For a moment, just a moment, the Desert Fox shows his teeth again. Then the fuel runs out. Panzers halt. Engines die. Crews scramble to siphon what they can from disabled vehicles. Allied aircraft swoop in, rockets flashing. The counterattack dissolves, not under enemy fire, but logistics. Rommel lowers his binoculars. He does not curse. He does not shout. He simply understands. That night he dictates another message to Berlin, more urgent this time. He states plainly that continued resistance will lead to encirclement and annihilation. He requests authority to withdraw immediately. The answer does not come. Instead, something else arrives. Orders transferring Rommel out of Africa. Officially for medical reasons. Unofficially because the truth he keeps sending north is no longer welcome. Rommel reads the order alone. The irony does not escape him. He has been fighting a war already lost by the time he was allowed to command it, and now he is being removed. Just as the end approaches, he steps outside one last time, listening to the distant rumble of battle. His men will continue to fight without him. Many will not leave Africa alive. Rommel knows this. As he prepares to depart, he leaves behind not a victorious army, but a warning written in numbers, ignored by those who refuse to read them. And the desert, indifferent as ever, begins to close over the last Axis hope. March 9, 1943, Tunis. Rommel boards the aircraft without ceremony. There is no speech, no farewell address. Just a brief exchange of salutes with officers who understand exactly what this means. His face is pale, drawn. Officially, he is ill. In truth, he is exhausted physically, morally, strategically. The war has outrun him here. As the aircraft lifts off, the North African coast recedes beneath the wing. Ports, roads, supply depots, targets that Allied pilots know by heart now. Rommel watches until the desert blurs into distance. He does not look back again. Behind him, the Axis position begins to collapse, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, methodically, with paperwork and timetables. General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim takes over command. He inherits Rommel's men, but not his freedom of action. Berlin's orders remain unchanged. Hold Tunisia at all costs. The costs, however, are already fixed. Allied pressure tightens. British forces push from the south and east. Americans drive from the west. No longer cautious, no longer green. Their coordination improves daily. Airfields spring up behind the front. Fuel and ammunition flow forward in a constant stream. Inside the Axis perimeter, the opposite is true. Fuel becomes rationed to the hour. Vehicles are camouflaged and hidden not to preserve combat power, but because moving them risks immediate destruction from the air. Artillery fires sparingly. Infantry dig deeper. The men feel it. They don't need reports to tell them the war is slipping away. They can see it in the sky, empty of Axis aircraft, filled with Allied contrails. They can hear it in the engines that never start. They can taste it in rations that grow thinner by the week. Rommel's absence is more than symbolic. He had been a conduit, a man who could argue, plead, sometimes even bully Berlin into granting limited autonomy. Without him, command becomes rigid. Decisions are delayed, opportunities are missed. In early April, Allied forces break through the Mareth line completely. What had been advertised as an impregnable position falls in days. Axis units retreat north, fighting rearguard actions through the hills and wadis of Tunisia. Every mile costs blood. Every mile gains nothing. In Germany, propaganda still speaks of resistance, of heroic stands in Africa. The reality on the ground is far grimmer. Axis units are being compressed into a shrinking pocket around Tunis and Bizerte. Ports are under constant bombardment. Ships that attempt evacuation are sunk faster than they can load. The numbers Rommel read weeks earlier are now manifest in flesh and steel. By May, it is over. On May 7th, Allied troops enter Tunis. 2 days later, Bizerte falls. Axis forces are cut off completely. No fuel, no ammunition, no escape. On May 13, 1943, over 250,000 German and Italian soldiers surrender. 250,000 men lost not in a single battle, but to arithmetic. Rommel hears the news in Germany. He says nothing. There is no satisfaction, no bitterness, only confirmation. Africa ended exactly when the numbers said it would. The Desert Fox had not been defeated by Montgomery, Patton, or Eisenhower alone. He had been defeated by shipping losses, air superiority, and a leadership that refused to accept limits. Rommel's career will continue for a time. Europe awaits. Normandy looms. But Africa leaves its mark on him. He will never again fully trust promises made far from the front. In North Africa, the war does not end with a last stand or a final charge. It ends with columns of prisoners marching into captivity under a clear Mediterranean sky, and with a report once opened in silence that told the truth before anyone else was ready to hear it.